Hey there, Patriots. Hope you're doing well. And the main reason I'm making another one of these AAA games bad video is because of two reasons. One, because of the recent disaster of that Gollum game, and because of the great success of Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun, which by the way, I am in the works of making a video of, so if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe. And quite honestly, there is no structure to this video. I'm just kind of free writing the script for this video, so everything may just kind of seem like I'm going on a tangent, which is basically what this video is. But I think a good place to start is AAA games. For the past while now, it feels like AAA games are getting worse and worse in quality. Every once in a while, you'll have a gem like Elden Ring, but feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but 2023 has yet to have a good AAA game, and there's not a single AAA game I can think of that I'm excited for. From what I've heard, the latest Star Wars game is good, but performance-wise, it's absolutely terrible. But even still, it's fucking sad that poor performing games are becoming a norm for these companies. And the question we always ask ourselves when this happens is, who's at fault here? Is it the game developers? Is it the company big shots that have no clue what it takes to make a game? Or is it the consumer who buys broken product and complains when product is broken? Well, I kinda have an answer for all of these questions. And for those of you who are asking, how does one be so wise in these trying times of the big gaming drought? And well, my answer comes from just experience with gaming for as long as I have. And the answer I have to all of this is, it's kind of everyone's fault. And how is that, I hear you asking? Well, let's start from the beginning, where I was when gaming was at its peak in the days of old. And if you're an old school gamer like I am, you'll probably remember when the gamer and the developer had a symbiotic relationship. The gaming landscape was so different back then. It was because game developers would make games that they knew us gamers want, and would make their games based around that community if it was a multiplayer game, of course. Single player games were just usually kind of their own thing, but if sequels were made, it was always an improvement from the last game they made. But multiplayer games back then were just completely different than what they are now, especially if you played games like Halo if you were on console. I can't really say anything about PC games back then because I was an Xbox kid back then, but Xbox 360, Halo 3, Reach, the old school COD games, those were the glory days of gaming, and sadly, those days will never come back. I feel sorry for all of you new-gen gamers that never got to experience what we did back in those days. And of course, the thing you'll hear the most from boomer gamers like me is that older games were made better than the new games. And that was mainly true when it came to big game studios. Usually your more AA and indie-like games back on the Xbox 360 were usually hit or miss. You might find a gem, while most others were Minecraft rip-off stinkers. But back in the day, games like COD, Battlefield, Halo, insert other mega title, whether it be a single player or multiplayer game, most of the time they were bangers. And pretty much any COD past World at War and before COD Ghosts were fantastic. And dear God, Battlefield Bad Company and 3 were gaming masterpieces, along with Halo 3 and Reach. I know that Reach was kind of the point that started to divide the Halo fan base, but I grew up on Reach and on custom games, and holy shit was that fun. You'll never experience getting invited by some random you played with and they got a full custom games lobby filled to play Fat Kid or Splatter Monkey. Back then, those games felt like they had soul. And now a lot of these multiplayer games that are coming out from these big companies just feel like they're soulless money farms. And look, I get the gaming landscape has drastically changed from like 15 years ago. The free-to-play Battle Pass model completely changed the landscape after Fortnite got huge success from it. And while that's fine, the problem is that now every game does that. Activision made Warzone, and now Warzone is its own separate free-to-play game with a Battle Pass. Halo Infinite has its own multiplayer free-to-play Battle Pass game, and dear God, how many other games are free-to-play Battle Pass games now? And single-player games are starting to add Battle Passes in their games now. It's like, when will it end? And when these games do come out, they're broken, buggy messes that they have to release big patches for, then they have to go make their PR apology on Twitter, and the game gets better after several months or even years. And this is where I say that this is really all the fault of the big business cats and us the players. And this is how I sort of structure it as. It's the big business cats' fault because the people who run the show at these big companies are investors who have no idea what a video game is, other than the fact that they are products made to entertain people who are willing to pay money for them. They see video games no different than fucking toothpaste. And this is the unfortunate side effect of video games becoming mainstream. mainstream. And look, I get companies need to make money, but there are these things called standards, and standards are what a lot of these companies have completely abandoned. And sadly, you see this with a lot of game companies we used to adore. Then, it's us, the gamers' fault. And it's probably going to anger a lot of you, but before you start protesting in the comments, let me explain real quick. The reason why I say that is because every time these games release, we may protest and get angry, but at the end of the day, if we keep pre-ordering, keep paying for the battle passes, keep buying the same COD every year, and keep playing the same game we say we hate and don't like, these companies don't care you're mad. They don't care if you're having a negative experience with the game, they only care if you're spending money on it. If you bought all the cosmetics and the battle passes the game has to offer, yet you still complain that the game is bad or not, at the end of the day, the only clown is you. These CEOs are running to the banks with your money that you spent on their dog shit game and using it to buy their yachts, their fancy sports cars, their real fancy mansions overlooking the ocean in Florida or California, and they're just looking at your reviews and saying, oh well, at least we made our money. And you know what? I don't give a fuck. All these fucking YouTubers that you watch just sit there and complain about a certain game, saying how bad it is and how much they hate that game, yet they're sitting there with a maxed out battle pass.
Fortnite battle pass, I just shit out my ass.
Own every cosmetic in the game, still playing that game. I hate to tell you this, but they're just grifting you. They're making videos talking about the frustrations that you are having with the game.
Ironic.
Yet they themselves still continue to play that game and spend money on it. They're contributing nothing in trying to help change the game. And they're making money by pretending to be just as frustrated as you are. You wanna know why I don't play Halo Infinite anymore? It's because I hated the direction that game went. I hated the lack of content, I hated how monetization heavy that game was, so I quit. You wanna know why I don't play COD? Because I fucking hate Activision. I hate the new CODs, I don't like the yearly recycling of the game, so I don't spend money on it. You wanna know why I don't play a whole lot of AAA games? Because they're dog shit. They are broken messes majority of the time. Not all of them are like that, obviously, but name me a AAA game out right now that's good. And you might say that Star Wars game. And sure, it may be good gameplay and story-wise, but the game came out broken. It was poorly optimized. I don't know if the game is fixed or not. I never played it, nor will I because I'm just personally not a Star Wars fan. But my point is that AAA games with big budgets behind them seem to come out worse than AA or indie games. I don't even get excited anymore for AAA games. And now as I'm writing this, the one game that does come to mind that was a good AAA game this year was a Dead Space remake, but that's just one of the few. And that just leads me to talk about indie games. As I said a few moments ago, I'm not excited for any upcoming AAA games. The only one I'm curious about coming out soon is Exoprimal, but even then, the only games I'm mostly excited for are either indie games or AA games. I made a list recently of upcoming dinosaur games I'm excited for, and the overwhelming majority of those games were indie games. And Warhammer 40k Boltgun is, in my opinion, a great example of why we should be looking at AA and indie game studios as the future of gaming. And with game engines getting better and better resources are coming out for indie studios to make better games, it makes me even more excited for indie games. So while I have been fairly negative towards the AAA side of games, I think there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that indie games aren't for everyone. A lot of the time, indie games tend to be more of a niche rather than attract toward the masses. But I do still think that there is an indie game out there for all of you. You just simply have to search for it. And I get too that games like Fortnite, Warzone, and all these free-to-play games attract a larger audience because of how accessible they are. And not everyone wants to spend money to play a game they're not even sure if they'll get their money's worth. Because unfortunately, a lot of these indie games are usually never fully released because of the lack of massive teams working on these games and having a big budget. And yeah, it sucks, but I think it's okay for us to fund someone's vision just as long as they actually work on them, of course. And I recently made a video talking about an indie game I really enjoy called RimWorld, which is a video I highly recommend you watch if you truly want to see the greatness of what an indie game can be. But anyway, that's about it for me. I'm sure I upsetted a lot of you with some of my opinions, but for those of you who understand and don't take it too much to heart, I like you. and the world would be a much better place if there were more people like you. And of course, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I always love having discussions, as long as it's civil, of course. I'm not one of those YouTubers that likes living in an echo chamber and only hear things I want to hear. I, of course, get a dopamine rush when people do agree with me, but I know not everyone does, and that's okay. And honestly, it makes me glad too when I see it. Just be respectable about it, of course, and not just with me, but with others in the comments too. Anyway, I want to go ahead and end it here and not drag it on much longer, so make sure to like to help out with the algorithm, subscribe if you'd like to see more of the content I have planned, and I shall see you when the next video drops.